Hey, everybody. This is Garin Hess with Consensus. I'd like to welcome everybody to this webinar. And just want to make sure before we get started that everybody can hear me okay. So if you could just hit the hand raise button on your attendee interface, if you can hear me. Oh, great. Okay, you can go ahead and lower those. And then just let me know if you're seeing the screen too. Raise your hand if you can see the screen now. Okay, perfect. I've been in too many situations where I just made that assumption and didn't work out. So thanks for that. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you have questions as we go along, please put them in the Q&A area, not the chat area, because they kind of get buried. And feel free to use the chat to make comments, whatever you want to do in the chat. Feel free to, as long as they're uplifting and kind and socially play well, then yeah, please feel free to use the chat in whatever way you want. And then if you have questions, put them in the question area, because at the end of the webinar, if there is time, which I think we'll have a few minutes to review any questions you might have, just put those in the actual Q&A area rather than chat so they don't get buried. Okay, oh, you've got 2 gray squares. Okay, thanks for letting me know about that, because those are little panels which I'm gonna hide. So for the purpose of this webinar, I'm just gonna be personally ignoring the chat myself and focusing on the content. So again, put the things in the Q&A area, but the chat can be something that you can use for your own purposes to communicate with the rest of the audience. Just because of force of circumstance in terms of my location, I just have my laptop don't have an extra screen, so won't have the chat panel up, so it won't cover the screen there. But thank you all for participating, and I'll check this chat channel every now and then just to make sure that I don't miss anything too serious, but I'm going to hide that so those little gray squares are gone. So thanks for that. So first of all, let me introduce myself. Garin Hess, I'm the founder and CEO of Consensus, also the author of the book, Selling is Easy, Buying is Hard. And we're gonna just briefly talk about that in a minute, but this is part of our Scaling Pre-Sales webinar series. And the topic today is the 6 demo types and where they belong. And before we dive into the meat of this content, the reason the book is relevant is because the book is a research-based book on using buyer enablement to drive digital sales and digital pre-sales and shorten sales cycles. And this entire topic that we're talking about today is very focused on the buyer's perspective, what the buyer needs at different stages, and how we can help them get what they need at those stages, nothing more, nothing less, so that they get their jobs done faster, and by so doing, will close the deal faster and more often. And that's really the promise of buyer enablement, is you'll be able to accelerate your deals, you'll be able to close more frequently, your close rates will go up, and it's not because you're doing a better job at selling, it's because you're doing a better job at helping the buyer and coaching them through the buying process more effectively. And that's what the whole book is about. It's a very research-based book. I recommend you go take a look at it out on Amazon and see some of the reviews and see if it's worthwhile for you. And it's something that has been helpful as we've engaged with the market. And I'll just put a link here in the chat so that you know where that's at. So what you're going to learn in this session is how building and delivering the right demos at the right buying stages, using the right methods and roles, can help scale pre-sales while also improving customer experience. A lot of times people think those are at odds. How can you scale and do things super efficiently using digital methods and still provide a better customer experience? A lot of people think that we're going to degrade the customer experience if we can't personally be in front of them at every step. And the reality is that buyers today do not want to talk to you at every step. They want, and mostly because it's hard to get a hold of you. If you could walk around with them 24/7, maybe they would want that. But the reality is that that's not possible. And so they don't want to wait. and they want to get access to what they need as quickly as possible. So just a short blurb about Consensus in case this is the first time you're interacting with us as a company. We are an intelligent demo automation software company that helps scale pre-sales teams through the use of interactive video demos. So the way this works is that pre-sales teams build a library of reusable interactive video demos that sales then sends out on demand. And these demos personalize in a patented way. They create a very personalized experience for each buyer and each stakeholder that joins that demo and watches that demo, and then Consensus tracks their engagement, sends that engagement and what we call demolytics back to the pre-sales and sales teams so that they can have even more effective conversations when they do engage in conversations. It's really helpful for qualifying. Many of our customers see their unqualified demos drop to near zero, and for scaling. And yes, it does improve the customer experience, and that may be counterintuitive to some of you, but I think some of this will help you understand why. So if you have any questions about Consensus and intelligent demo automation, please go out to goconsensus.com, and you can learn a lot there, and you can actually experience your own interactive video demo there and see how it works and see what the experience is like. And you can decide for yourself whether that's something that you think would help your buyers and thereby help move things a lot more effectively. Our customers see that when they do this, they're able to increase pre-sales productivity by as much as double and shorten the sales cycles by anywhere between 30 and 68%, and increase close rates by as much as 44%. So using digital pre-sales is one of the most important ways and effective ways to unlock revenue. And I consider this to be under the banner of pre-sales-led growth. I think there's so much opportunity to make pre-sales more effective, more efficient, thereby making the buyers more effective, and thereby unlocking a lot more revenue. And we've seen this proven time and time again across our customer base. So, but the things we're going to share today are not necessarily tied to our software. This is these are concepts around the 6 demo types, where they belong, and you can apply them whether you use demo automation technology or not. And I would recommend that you do use these concepts regardless of whether you use our demo automation platform or not. Obviously, I'm going to share how these concepts fit into demo automation. We're going to talk about which demos should be automated, which should absolutely not be automated, and what are the good candidates, and some concepts around those as well. Who should be building them, and even what demos you might be able to, what demo types you should be able to delegate. So let's dive into the content here, the 6 demo types and where they belong. So first of all, what is the type of content that buyers want most? Well, Gartner asked this question in research a few years ago, and demonstrations was number 1, followed by case studies or social proof, and then value assessment tools. And I would recommend that if you focus on just those top 3 things and helping your buyers get access to what they need in those 3 areas, you're going to have tremendous success. But we're going to focus on demonstrations because that is the number 1 thing that they want. So what are the 6 demo types? Just to give you a little preview, there is the vision demo, which I'm going to give some credit to Peter Cohen for coining that, the vision demo. And we're going to talk about what each of these mean in a minute. But just to give you a little brief intro into what these are all about, the vision demo, the micro demo, the qualifying demo, the pre-sales or live technical demo. And now all these can be live, and not quite often they are, but we put live there because we're talking about automation more lately. But the pre-sales or technical deep dive demo, what we call closing demos. And then these are all associated with different stages of the buying process. So you can see that there are 3 main buying processes. This is to get to a first commitment. Obviously, there's the buying process after the sale goes through to get a renewal, get expansions, but we're just talking about getting through to that first purchase. And and these same principles can apply post-purchase in the next buying cycle or with new teams. So the three main stages are the need, the learning, and then the buying, the actual decision to buy. But they're broken down into these subcomponents: discontent, research, comparison, fear, and commitment. So I want to give credit to Kevin Davis in his book, Sales Manager's Guide to Greatness. He's the one that came up with these different stages. I think it's good. There are a lot of different buying processes that you can go look at on the internet, different frameworks, but I like this one quite a bit because it looks at it from the buyer's perspective. So one other type of demo that we'll talk about is the FAQ demo. And the FAQ demo just kind of runs throughout. And how often are you pulled into just ongoing questions? It happens throughout the buying process. So you think about all of these types of demos that buyers need, and I would argue that many of you and sales engineers on your team are already doing these types of demos in many cases. They're just not quantified or put in a manageable context to make sense about how to manage these effectively. But you think about all the times that you're pulled into just, could you do that quick 10-minute, 15-minute demo by the sales team? Or let's just do a standard demo, the dreaded standard demo for 45 minutes. And this is where we think about that, and what we call the qualifying demos, often the stage where the standard demo is done. So anyway, this is just a quick peek. We'll dive into each of these in more detail, but the whole point is, if you think about what the buyer needs at every stage, then you'll understand how to right size the demo that you're delivering to that buyer at that stage. So let's skip this one and just, oh yes, this is my slide for Kevin Davis. Just give him credit where credit is due. And I like his buying process diagram here because it shows it as a circle or a cycle, which is exactly what happens. It's not linear, it's circular in the sense that once you're done with a purchase, you go right into this section here, the value section. And then of course, you're hoping they will renew and expand, and you're back into a completely new buying process. So the buying process never actually stops from the moment they engage with you to the time that they stop being a customer over several years. They're in a buying process with you. We're just focusing mostly on the initial buying process, but again, these principles can be applied throughout. So let's dive into a discussion about the status quo. What I've observed is that there are a couple of different dysfunctional approaches to demoing in the current industry. One is, let's don't demo until we absolutely have to. Never demo too early. Don't deliver the demo until we're ready and we're sure that they are ready. And a lot of times this is because we don't want them to see more than they need. We don't want them to get caught up in details that will just confuse them. It's also because the demo is so much in demand, right? It's the number one thing that the buyers want, that a lot of times sales teams and pre-sales teams will hold that back because they know they can keep the customer engaged until they do the demo at least. But think of this from the buyer's perspective. If it's the number one thing that they want and we're constantly holding them back, that's not a good buying experience. And I guarantee you, if you are doing it this way, your buyers are frustrated. That decreases your likelihood to purchase, and it elongates the sales cycle because they don't get what they need. But these other concerns are valid, which is why this dysfunctional practice has been put into place. Now, on the flip side, many organizations do just the opposite. The customer's always right. Whenever the prospect asks, we deliver a demo because we are customer focused. Again, the principles are good, but the problem here is that your solution consultants are pulled into every possible conversation and they're stretched too thin. And we're seeing this across the board, that pre-sales is getting pulled and in demand across the entire funnel, earlier than ever before and later after the purchase than ever before. And a lot of this comes from this need to just give the customer what they want whenever they want it. And again, the principle is not bad. The customer needs it, but it's not sustainable. It also reduces morale because solution consultants are overqualified to do these really early stage demos. And it creates a lot of disjointed multitasking that has been proven to be very ineffective when you're getting pulled into so many conversations. So, but the problem is, how do you deal with this? Well, we're going to talk about that. But before we can deal with the problem of scaling that and being more efficient, we need to talk about the different demo types so that we can understand what to do with them and what is the best buying experience that way. So the problem with each of these approaches is multitudinous. First of all, never demo too early. 70% of prospects have to wait at least 3 weeks. This is according to the Sales Engineering Workload or Compensation and Workload Report. And if you want to download that, you can go to the goconsensus.com website and look in the research area, and you'll find the 2021 workload report. Now we're also in the middle of collecting data on that report for 2022. So please stay tuned to that. And if you're interested in that, you can go out to our website and sign up for that as well. But the point is that prospects have to wait too long to get their demo, right? If they want a demo right away, but they have to wait 3 weeks, even 1 week is too long. This frustrates prospects, it frustrates your sales counterparts, it opens doors to competitors, because if they're giving them a demo right away, they're gonna get what they need faster. The flip side, when the customer is always right and will demo whenever, it's overwhelming them with information. It's an overuse of sales engineering time and resources. And what does this lead to? Funnel attrition on the one hand and wasted resources on the other. Neither is a good option. So let's talk about how we address all of this. So first of all, we have to talk about how the word demo is too narrowly defined for many people. And we've been preaching this quote unquote doctrine of 6 demo types for a couple of years now. So hopefully you're thinking about demos as being quite different. A lot of times pre-sales professionals think of demos in there are 2 demo types. There's the standard demo and there is the demo, the technical demo. And really, as we've observed our customers and as we do our own sales process, we see that there are really these 6 different types of demos. And so it's really helpful to identify them, then you can more effectively manage them. So before we do that, let's dive into this concept of buyer empathy, which is thinking as if you're in the buyer's shoes. What do they really want to know at each stage? And what are they ready for at each stage? So again, going back to our main infographic here about the 6 demo types and how it relates, the question is, what do they need at the early discontent and research stage, the comparison, the fear stage, and then the commitment stage? So let's dive into each one of these. First of all, and you can ignore this little text under here. We'll dive into this a little bit later. But the vision demo is really at this point of need and discontent. They're discontented. They want something. They want a different thing to happen in their lives. And at this stage, they're asking questions like this. I have a problem, and I'm wondering if the solution I'm looking at will help solve my problems or reach my objectives. And then also, they just want to catch a vision of what will my life and my company's life be like if we adopt this solution. And then finally, how have other companies succeeded with your solution? So at this stage, they're just trying to get a sense for, here's my problem or the opportunity I'm sensing, and is there alignment with the company, the vendor I'm looking at? And again, we don't want to give them more than what they need here. At this stage, they really just need to catch the vision. The focus is on the problem, the solution, and the benefits, and then just the tiniest of peeks into the product. They do want to have a sense, but here we're talking screenshots of some of the key areas that will help tell the story about the vision, and that's it. So who's supposed to build this out? Marketing. Marketing generally builds out the vision demo. Now, the vision demo is often an explainer video. It's often a pitch deck. It's whatever it is that marketing builds to help pitch the vision. The buyers at this stage, in terms of product education, all they really want is, they just want a glimpse into like, oh, that's interesting. That looks interesting. That looks helpful. All we're really trying to get to here is just engage the buyer, help them see that there's alignment, that they want to move forward. So in the next stage, they start doing research. And at this stage, it's the perfect time to help them with a micro demo. And what are they thinking about at this stage? Again, buyer empathy. What do they want? At this point, they bought into the vision, at least temporarily. And they're asking things like this. I like the vision, but now I want to see the product. In general, how does this solution work? They don't want to get overwhelmed here. So don't overwhelm me. Only show what I'm interested in. I'm looking for obvious disqualifiers at this point. Is there anything that would make me think, this vendor, I don't want to move forward with them? And lastly, help me connect the dots between the vision and how the solution gets us there. They have an idea in their mind because they've seen a couple things on the website, but now they want to just a peek into the product in a way that helps them further believe, yeah, actually, I think this product can get to the vision. But at this point, they don't want a ton of detail. So we call this a micro demo because it is very generic, but it is product oriented. But you still need to emphasize, and throughout each of these 6 demo types, you need to emphasize the problem, solution, and benefit. So you're going to spend the entirety of the vision demo on that, but at every succeeding demo type, you also need to re-emphasize that and underscore that. So just as a reminder, as we go through this, if you have questions, please go out to in the Q&A area and put those in, and I'll check those at the end for any of you who came in late. So we talked about the vision demo, the micro demo. Now let's go on to the next stage of their process. They were in that need and change. Now we're in this learning stage where they're researching and comparing, and it's what we call the qualifying demo, or the discovery and qualifying demo. Sometimes people think of this as the standard demo stage. And at this stage, what are the buyers thinking about? I'm generally convinced this is a good potential solution. I've gotten the vision, I got a peek into the product. Now I'm getting pretty serious. I want to put you on my short list. So I'm narrowing down my solutions. So I want to start digging deeper. I'm narrowing down my list of solutions. But right now, I just want to see what interests me. I don't want to see a full-blown proof of concept. I don't need a deep technical dive, but I still just want to see what's interesting to me. I need it personalized. And then, especially at this stage, because they're in the comparison stage, they're really focused on how is the solution really different from other vendors. So in the qualifying and discovery demo, there are 2 things happening. The reason we call it a qualifying demo. Now, each of these demos could be used to help qualify. Don't get me wrong. All of these help qualify the prospect. And in every stage, they are trying to qualify you as well. And in reality, what's happening is disqualification. And this goes both ways. As a vendor, we're trying to disqualify them. I mean, we say we're trying to qualify them, but we're really trying to find out which are the ones that we want to kick out of the funnel, or ignore, or service them some other way, just so if they're just tire kickers and they have no intent to buy, and from the buyer's perspective, they're trying to do the same. How can I disqualify? I've got 5 vendors. I need to narrow it down to 2 or 3. I don't want to be evaluating deeply 5 vendors. So how do I get down to a short list? So that's why we call it the qualifying demo. Any of these demos can be used to help qualify, but at this stage is really get serious about making the short list both ways, on the buyer side and on the vendor side. So then we get into the pre-sales technical demo. Now, we just generally call this the technical demo. And the reason we put pre-sales here is because when we get into automation, this is one for sure that is not a good candidate for automation, with one exception, which I'll talk about. But this is the demo that most of us in the pre-sales world think about as the demo, because this is where you go super deep. It's an hour or longer quite often. Sometimes it's on site and you're going multiple days, right? It really depends on how many product lines and how deep the solution is. Used to be on site, I should say. That's rare anymore, as we've all learned to do all of this remotely. But it's almost always live, and it's long. And for good reason, because at this point, you're on the short list, they're trying to make final decisions, and you're demonstrating whether you can actually meet the needs, the complex needs of the buyer. Now, what is the buyer thinking at this point? They're afraid. And they're afraid they're making a bad decision. So your goal across the entire process is to build trust and to reduce their fear and increase their confidence. But especially at this stage is where they need that fear to drop and the confidence to rise to the point where they can make a final commitment. So this is the part where they're thinking things like this. I need to verify that the solution is really going to work in and with our solution and in our environment, et cetera. And you've made my short list, but I'm afraid of making a bad decision. You think about what's going on in their minds and in their lives. They are putting their careers at risk because of their desire to make a change in their organization. They also have a desire to have upward mobility. If they bring a great new solution into their company and it works well, they get a lot of social and potentially economic benefits inside the organization and upward mobility. As an example, some of our customers that brought consensus into their organizations have been promoted into top level of management because of the impact it has had in their organization. One recently was made at a title, Rob Bruce over at Steve-O Season was promoted into a title of something like Global Buyer Enablement Leader or something. I can't remember what the title was. But my point is that at this stage, they're both afraid they're going to make a mistake and get hammered, but they're also thinking about the opportunity, continuing to think about the opportunity that this will provide them in their own careers to have upward mobility in the organization. So then let's say that they get to that point, they're ready to make a purchase, and they give you a verbal commitment, or they're getting very close to that. They may have even given a verbal commitment, but you're in red lines and things like that. And at this point, their confidence is high, but they're still wanting to make sure that they can deliver effectively on the promise that they're giving to the rest of their internal team. And so what are they thinking about here? They're thinking about things like, well, nice work, vendor. I've convinced you're the right vendor, but I still have a bunch of questions about how we get the results we've been talking about. So they're now moving past concept, and they want to see, how do we actually implement this in a way that will be truly effective? Now, you've probably answered a lot of that in the technical demo, but now they're talking about, how do we measure results? How do we actually implement this? What kinds of teams do we need to get involved to get trained? What consulting do we need as we go through implementation, and so on? They ask things like, how long will implementation take and what's involved? Is there training? How do you integrate with our existing systems? What about data security and GDPR? These, I would submit, are all candidates for a type of demo. Now, they're not all super technical or super product oriented, but they can still be answered, and you're quite frequently brought in to answer these as solution consultants, to answer these kinds of questions. So how do we make a demo out of this? And this is what I would be considered the closing demos, because they're just, once they get these questions answered, the deal's pretty much done. And you can probably think of other questions that are answered that surface at the very late stage. Now, we'll talk about automation, but this is a great candidate for automation because, for example, at Consensus, everybody wants to know, can you integrate with our CRM? Can you integrate with Salesforce? Does intelligent demo automation integrate with Salesforce? How does it work? Or whatever other CRM you have. Well, instead of getting on a call every single time to show them our Salesforce native application, how the data passes through, how they can build custom reports, all this stuff, we send them an interactive video demo. And we send this usually before they even ask for it. And that's a key buyer enablement principle, is you already know what they're probably going to ask for, because you've led them, you've coached other buyers through this process dozens, hundreds of times, thousands of times as an organization. So you should know what's going to come up. And you probably asked ahead of time. For example, in our conversations, we always ask them early on, what CRM do you use? They'll say Salesforce. And they'll usually ask early on, do you have an integration with that? And we say yes. And that's all they need, or in the early stages. But when they get to this stage, they want to really understand, how does this work? So before they ask for it, we'll say, hey, usually at this point, you should be thinking about how to actually implement this so that it works with your CRM. So I'm sending you this interactive video demo to help you understand that. So key principle in buyer enablement is anticipate their needs before they realize it, and equip them with the content that they need to to get their questions answered, to get their jobs done. They might need to bring in a Salesforce or a CRM administrator, something like that, right? So you're trying to help them through that. Well, that's what this stage is down here, is just closing demo. You're thinking about all these knick-knacky things. And one thing I'll say, which is related to the stage, is I highly recommend building a implementation guide. And in our guide, for example, we show exactly how much time will take during the sales process and each week in the first 4 weeks after the purchase is done, and what kind of roles need to get involved. In fact, let me just pull up, I hadn't thought to do this, but let me just pull up an example of our implementation guide and show you what I'm talking about, just so you get a sense for what this looks like. So, so at this stage, obviously this is not a demo, this is a PDF, but this is one of the things that we include in a demo in the closing stages, so that they can be guided through this implementation guide and what steps are involved. But you can see we put in, of course, reinforcing the benefits of our particular solution. And then we have the preparation phase. During the sales process, we're estimating this is how much time you're gonna have to spend on implementation tasks. And here's how it pans out, right? These are the tasks you need to complete during the sales process. Then we have setting expectations with your team, which should start even before you close. Then there's, what are you going to do in the first week? How much time is it going to take you? And then there is the second week, estimated number of hours, the third week, and so on. Now, obviously, this may change by buyer, by customer, but it's really effective in increasing the confidence at this stage of the buying process. So, so we just consider this to be kind of the closing demo stage. Now, does the solution consultant get in there and do a demo of that? Yes, if we didn't already have it as an interactive video demo and as a PDF. But my point is, think about what the buyer needs at this stage and make plans to help them get what they need and anticipate those demands earlier. So those are the 6 different demo types, different things that they need at those stages. Let's look at these in a different way. Now, we talked about those 5, the FAQ demos just all throughout, and questions they might have throughout. So we'll skip this length here because this is more about the automation recommendations. But looking at each one of these, look at the increasing depth that you're taking them in the different demos in terms of product education. Also, what are the objectives of each stage? In the vision demo, it's really to get a qualified lead. The micro demo, to prepare the prospect for the first appointment, discover stakeholders potentially. And this is if you're doing it before using demo automation. The qualifying discovery demo is really to discover stakeholders and qualify for a pre-sales resource. If you haven't heard us talk about the demo qualified lead concept, or the DQL, right? There's an MQL and SQL. Why isn't there a demo qualified lead stage in the process in your organizations? And some of you are already implementing these, but that's what we're talking about, is using this stage to qualify pre-sales resources. The technical demos really there to win shortlist and verbal decisions. And then, of course, closing demos to increase confidence, emotional ROI, that they're going to truly be able to succeed at the big change that they're making. Now, one key point here, who builds this? The only place marketing should get involved, vision demo. And really, it should be guided and heavily influenced by pre-sales. Because what do buyers want? They want demo, based on a quote by some Gartner research, that is rich in technical detail and cannot be easily faked. Well, that's sales engineering content. So sales engineering and pre-sales, sales engineering throughout should be the ones that are focused on this. And down here in FAQs, sales or sales engineering, aka pre-sales, can help with those FAQs. Sometimes the FAQ demos are really sales questions rather than pre-sales, but you can see how heavily involved pre-sales should be throughout this process. So, and I would argue just one other thing about this, that when you build these out, marketing content does not play well. other than at the vision stage, because buyers want real content. They want to pull back the curtain, see what's really going on. They don't want to waste time. They don't want fluff. They want the real deal. And that's why sales engineering needs to be the one building out this content if it's something that you're automating. But again, you don't have to automate these to understand how these can be more effective. If just by classifying these into 6 demo types and thinking about what the buyer needs at each stage, your sales engineers will be more likely to deliver the right kinds of content at the right stages. You don't want to over deliver and you don't want to under deliver. And I would say one of the dangers that I've seen is that sales engineers are too often over deliver, and just the first opportunity they have to show product, they show too much. So at these early stages, you really need to be careful about not overdoing that if you're delivering them live. So let's go on to a second here. No problem with my deck, so let me just move on to the next slide here. Let's talk about where these belong in the sales cycle or the buying process. So, and this is just a really rough way of saying we have a sales cycle, right? The need, learn, buy, and the SDR, BDR setting up the appointments, and you have just appointment after appointment going on weeks in a row. So vision demo is really correlated with that BDR stage, and the micro demo with the first or second appointment. Quite often, if you automate, this can actually be sent before the first appointment, and they get educated faster. The DQL stage, or the qualifying discovery demo, also happens fairly early. Now, when we say first pre-sales appointment, this is a best case scenario. If you're using demo automation to help automate some of these other demo types, this could be that your technical demo is really the first live pre-sales engagement. Now, you might have a discovery, and if that's separated from, you will have a discovery, and if it's separated from the demo itself, which it usually is, that's obviously not the first pre-sales appointment you're going to have. But the point is, when we're talking about demos and just the demo itself, this would be the first pre-sales demo if you end up automating the vision, micro, and standard or qualifying demos. So then as they move farther along in the purchasing decision, you're going to be doing the closing demos. So a concept I want to share with you is what we call selling between meetings, or sometimes we call it selling in the gaps. And the idea is that using demo automation, you can send interactive video demos between the appointments. So Gartner has this great research, which just to save slide time, I didn't put in this slide, but they say that 17% of the time is the only amount of time that buyers spend interacting with the vendors. So you really get only maybe 5% of their time if they're talking to 3 vendors. So how do you stay engaged, keep that conversation going? How do you be part of that conversation when they're not right in front of you? And that's using interactive video demos or intelligent demo automation to send them these demos, pre-built demos at these different stages between appointments. So selling in the gaps helps keep momentum. It helps give you data as they are engaged, visibility into their activities, discovering stakeholders. It really makes a tremendous difference. And I'm going to tell you a little story about this. 2 stories, really. One of them was we were selling into Oracle, which was we had an entry deal and we wanted to get some expansion, but we couldn't get time on the calendar with the pre-sales leader that we were selling into. And one day we sent a demo as an answer to a question. It was an FAQ demo, and to our main champion. Well, he ended up sharing that with his boss, and he shared it with a bunch of other people, watched it, and within 24 hours we had 12 people engaged. And that visibility led us into attempting to re-engage with that leader, and we ended up closing a deal about 6 weeks later in his London office. So that's one example of using an FAQ demo. Another example is we had a customer that really got all the way down to this stage where they'd given us a verbal commitment, but it was right up against the holidays. It was actually about a year ago today that they went radio silent. They were over in Europe, and everybody, all of our champions and the stakeholders took off, or at least they weren't responding. it was their end of year, so they were busy as well. Many of them were out in holidays. But because we had sent them these different interactive video demos, when we got back from the holidays, we saw immediately they started engaging with them and who was engaging. And even though they didn't immediately start engaging with us, we could have that visibility, and we were able to see that, and it gave us the confidence as we went into the close later in that month. So again, the question with selling between meetings is, how do you stay part of the conversation even though you only get 17% of their time? So that's the concept here, selling in the gaps. So question, what demos should we automate, if any? And first, to understand that, we have to answer, what is demo automation? So let's take a brief look at what this means. And to automate at scale, you really need to personalize at scale, because if you don't personalize, automation is not going to work. There have been many organizations, maybe you have tried this, where you set up a YouTube channel and you put all your product videos out there. That may help to some extent, but it's not personalized, and they're hard to track, and you're not necessarily getting unique insights into the buying group behaviors. And so it's not a really good substitute for the live demos. So the question is, how do you personalize at scale? So just to give you a quick peek into how consensus and intelligent demo automation works, when someone engages with an automated demo, it asks them questions about what is driving their interest, what is very important, somewhat and not important. And I would say if your demo automation platform is not doing this, if it's not personalizing based on the questions that are being asked, it's not a true demo automation platform, because you're not able to personalize at scale. So in this case, when somebody says very important or some important, what it then does in the demo itself is it's going to start with the things that are very important, and then it also actually pulls video clips in that are more in depth. And so if somebody says something's somewhat important, you're not going to go in as much depth as if they say it's very important. And so consensus interactive video demos will actually do this and simulate what a good sales engineer would do, is they would tailor it to the unique interests, both in sequence and in depth, to the prospect. And this happens automatically. So video clips and documents that are related to how they answer those questions. And then of course, it's letting you know when they're engaging, so you can further reach out, or so that you can look at the analytics. And as you look at all the different people engaging, you can see what is very important to them, what is somewhat important, and what is not important. And this gives you a sense on any given person, what's driving their interest, and it also gives you a sense on alignment. So look at this one here. This particular buying group, this is a snapshot from a real account of ours. This particular buying group looks super aligned on this topic, and this topic. I mean, every single person marked very important. But on this topic, you've got some people saying it's very important, some saying somewhat, and one person is saying this is not important at all. So how interesting, right? This gives you information to help you understand how to have the conversation when you do have the live conversation. So in a nutshell, the way this works is the AE sends out the demo link, which was already built by the pre-sales person. They receive an email, and they engage with that. They answer these questions. They watch the demo as it personalizes to them. The account executive gets that email notification saying they watched. The prospect then is so interested in this because it's so personalized that they share it with other people that register to join the demo. And this creates this flywheel effect of viral sharing, and you're discovering new stakeholders. Many of our customers discover hundreds of new stakeholders organically every single month through this process. You can imagine how that affects the sales cycle and how it shortens it. So that's a quick view of how demo automation works, so that we can have the conversation about what demos should be automated, which should not. So in short, automating every type of demo except the technical demo is what we recommend. Now, not every buyer is going to engage with your automated demos. So it doesn't mean that every buyer is going to do that, but if you could get a third, let's say, of your buyers to engage with these types of demos as automated interactive video demos, then you can think about how much pre-sales resource you can reallocate to higher value activities, rather than having them be giving micro or standard demos over and over and over. So what we should not automate is the technical demo, obviously. And this is where, and the whole goal that we have with scaling pre-sales and automating demos is to help give back to every sales engineer more time so they can spend more time preparing and delivering those high value consulting conversations and demonstrations. So the one exception I would say to creating an automated or interactive video demo for this technical demo stage is that we've seen it to be effective with large enterprise deals where you build it as a very one-off automated demo just for that particular deal, and you send it as a follow-on after the technical demo for those stakeholders that either didn't come, or maybe there's some that just want to go back and review. And so you can take, if you record the actual demo that you do, you can actually take that and whittle it down and create an interactive video asset demo that you send that can be sent as a follow-on. So that would be my only recommendation when you're dealing with a technical demo, is to consider doing that. So going back to this question of choosing the right demo, or what demo do you want to do at what stage, and whether you should automate. Now, some people think it's not going to give them a good experience if we automate. A video recording is not as good as talking to somebody. Well, the reality is that buyers today, they want to engage with digital assets that are as helpful or more helpful. And quite often, frankly, because a lot of sales engineers don't demo very well, the interactive video demo is a lot better than one they could get live. And so it helps create standardized experiences for your buyers across the board in those early stages and in those later closing stages as well. Now, we're not saying we're replacing sales engineers by any means. What we're really doing is saying we are arming you with these assets that will make you even more effective. And I would just ask you to ask yourself these questions. Is it worth making them wait? And the answer is no, you really shouldn't make buyers wait. And then, so who can get them what they want? And this all leads to, how do we actually scale the pre-sales organization effectively? So just a couple of parting principles as we wrap up here with the main content. You can see the different demo types here, and then the status quo of who's delivering them. Well, when you're scaling, you want to focus on 3 different things. And there's this great book by Roy Vaden called Procrastinate on Purpose. Highly recommend it. He has this infographic of focus funnel. And this is not really about, his book's not about pre-sales. It's just about how to multiply your time, which is a scaling question. And I like these principles of eliminate, automate, and delegate as a main focus. So, and we'll just talk here about automating and delegating initially. So what do we automate? What can we delegate to sales? Now, heaven forbid you should delegate to BDRs or AEs to deliver any of these. But the reality, and that's why demo automation can be so helpful, because when they send them out, they're not actually doing the demo. They're basically sending out a surrogate for the sales engineer, which is a recording of presumably one of your best sales engineers doing the demo. Now, some of the buyers are not going to engage with those, and so they're still going to be talking to the AE. And the question is, do we delegate that to them? So again, here's our recommendation on automating, which we already talked through, and then related to that is just delegating. And there are lots of different ways to delegate to AEs. They're not all going to be very effective, and you have to be very choosy. But one of the ways, of course, is just creating click-through decks, which probably many of you do. Again, I would argue that the best way to delegate to them is to create the interactive video demos, put those in their hands, and then they can send those out on demand. But to scale effectively, you need to automate and delegate, and this effectively eliminates your unqualified demos and reallocates all that time to be put into high value activities by your solution consultants. So I'm just going to skip through here in the interest of time, and let's talk through just the length of these. So when you're automating, you're making these interactive video demos, the vision demo really should be no longer than 5 to 7 minutes. And if it's even shorter, the better, right? Sometimes it's as little as 1 to 2 minutes. The micro demo, we're talking, it's an overview of the product, but it's just a peek. and this is 10 to 12 minutes. Now, why is there a range? Because again, if you're automating these, they're able to select what's important to them, and it's no prospect is going to get the same demo as somebody else, because the way that the demo automation platform works is it dynamically grabs video clips and documents based on what they're answering. So how much they engage with these is up to them, but generally speaking, these would be our recommendations. On a micro demo, 10 to 12 minutes, qualifying demo 12 to 25 minutes. The technical demo, of course, is not an automation candidate for the most part, and that's just whatever amount of time you guys normally spend. And there's people, like Peter Cohen, Don Carmichael, and others who can help you be better at that particular stage of the journey. And just to mention four of my favorite people in this regard is, as I mentioned, Peter Cohen, Don Carmichael, Carrie Zolkowski, and Chris White. These are all have different perspectives on how to improve live demos, but they're people that I highly respect in the industry. And I'll mention John Kerr as well. Don't mean to leave him out. So Peter and John obviously are some of the most longstanding, along with Don Carmichael, longstanding consultants in the industry. So just want to thank them. I saw Peter's on the chat, so just want to thank them for all the influence and they have on our profession. So closing demos generally are 1 to 5 minutes, and FAQ demos the same. These are ones where you're just going to hit record when somebody asks you a question, and then you have that built out. They're just usually one video clip in the demo. It's not some sort of highly personalized thing, but I would say there's one other demo type, which I'm going to tell you in a minute, that is even more personalized, and it's called the instant demo. So I'm going to give you a bonus of 7 demo types instead of 6. But first, let's ask this question. If the buyers in the buying groups in your deals could get what they need when they want it, how would it impact their likelihood to purchase? Like, think about your own behaviors. You know that that's going to increase the likelihood of purchase. And we've seen this time and time again, and our customers often, when they implement this type of framework, as well as automation, it shortens the sales cycle by as much as 68%, which really blows my mind. When we first started designing this solution, we thought maybe it would help shorten the sales cycle 10 to 20%. It's pretty amazing to see sometimes. And then another question to ask you, if 90% of your SE's time were spent on technical demo setup, prep, rehearsal, and delivery, and strategic conversations, how would it change your business? It's never going to be 100%. They're going to be pulled in different places. And we have a completely separate topic called scaling pre-sales that you should get into. And maybe I recommend getting the ebook or looking at the webinar recording. It talks about gap analysis and 8 different strategies for scaling pre-sales. And demo automation is just one. But the whole goal of this is to identify low value activities and high value key activities. And how do you either automate or delegate some of those low value activities so that you can increase the percentage of time on those high value activities? That's the essence of scaling, because scaling is not hiring more people. It's getting increased value or exponential output from a fixed set of resources. So that's a totally different topic, which I'll leave it at that. So lastly, the last bonus demo type, like I said, is the instant demo. And this is basically just the ability to hit record and send out a very personalized recording of a specific, and this could be an FAQ type of demo, but in this case, you're just, somebody asks you a question or you want to engage with them with just a single video demo type. So that concludes the formal part of my presentation. We have just a couple of minutes for questions. So I won't be able to answer everybody's questions, but let me just sure we get a look at these here. So first of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming, and I'm going to dive into the Q&A. Looks like we have just a couple of questions. The first one was, when you say automated demo, what does it mean? I think we've answered that, but basically what we're talking about is creating a library of interactive video demos that are reusable, that automatically personalize at scale. So it's not enough to have a link to a YouTube video or a WebEx recording. That can be, I'm not saying those aren't helpful, but you're not really going to get the benefits of scaling pre-sales or automating the 6 demo types without some kind of demo automation platform that personalizes to each person, persona, and to the individual. So we're talking about automating, we're talking about personalization at scale. So another question is, have you done any research on buyer demographics of who responds better to the approach you're presenting? So it's an interesting question. And I would say that we have some research, for example, the selling in the gaps. Well, first of all, let me back up and say this. The approach I'm presenting is not a new approach. Now, you might think of it as a new approach, but it is what the buyers are expecting. This is not me just saying, this is my recommended approach. This is what buyers need based on the research, and you can read more about this in the book. There's a whole bunch of research around what the buyers need at these different stages. And so this is more my observation of what sales engineering teams are already doing, but they just don't know they're doing it. So sales engineers are getting pulled into vision demos, micro demos, standard demos, technical demos, closing demos, FAQ demos. They're already getting pulled into all of these conversations. What I've tried to do here is just say, let's look at what's actually happening with our pre-sales teams and classify what's happening so we can have better best practices put around them. And so there's that. Now I'll share a little bit of research that is related to this, and we don't have enough time to dive into a lot more of this, but hopefully this will be helpful. So when we talk about selling in the gaps and micro demos, one of the things that we found as we did our own test was that when you send a micro demo, an automated micro demo, between the time, so the time the SDR sets an appointment, the time the appointment happens, there's this gap. Well, what are you doing in that gap? Are you just waiting for that appointment to happen? You shouldn't be. Sending an interactive video demo, if your champion engages with that, they're 34% more likely to become a qualified opportunity. If they engage with it and share it with one other stakeholder before that first appointment, they're 81% more likely to become a qualified opportunity. So that's just one data point to emphasize how effective this kind of model can be. And again, it's just a micro demo. If we were to send them a WebEx recording, or hey, here's a link to our YouTube, you're just not going to have the same impact. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to have some impact, but being able to truly automate, meaning personalize the demo experience when they're in between meetings, that's where the benefits come from this. And of course, sending the right type of demo for their stage. So I guess that's where I'll leave that, given in the interest of time. So one question came in, and this will have to be our last one, I think. How would you map all these types of demos when prospects belong to the small business market segment? For this type of market segment, the sales cycle needs to be quite short, 60 days or less. And I see very challenging to do more than one demo due to the lack of resources and time from both buyers and sellers. What do you think? Well, the answer is demo automation. So there's no way you can apply, this is what the buyers need. So you're not going to be able to change that. The buyers need this, whether they're small business or whether they're large business. Now in large business, the needs become more complex, but the buyers still need all these different phases. That doesn't change. However, how you address it can definitely be adapted. So when you go down market and there's high volume, small deal size, you can't apply the same heavy-handed, high-touch sales process and pre-sales process that you do at the top end of the market. So what we recommend is a semi-automated or a completely automated way for the small business segment, where you can tie this in with, say, marketing automation tools that will send out emails that give the recommended demos at different stages. We have customers that have closed deals as high as $70,000 without any pre-sales involvement. And that may seem like a large deal to some, but some of our customers are so big that is a small deal to them, and that would represent a small business deal to them. So they're able to automate or semi-automate a large portion of that. So that's what I would recommend there. So thank you all for participating. That's all the questions I'm going to be able to answer. Please reach out to me if you have any questions whatsoever. And you can see my contact information there on the screen. Please go to goconsensus.com if you want to experience our micro demo out on our website. And you can see how this whole demo automation thing works. I also want to encourage you to join our 2022 sales engineering compensation and workload survey. We had over 1,000 people participate in that survey last year, or I'd say earlier, well, for this year, it was earlier this year. We're hoping to get as many as 1,500 respondents this year, so please go check that out. And you should be able to find that on our website. If not, shoot me an email or grab me on LinkedIn and I can get you a link. I should have been prepared and brought that link with me for this and put it in the chat. But I'm sure we'll follow up with that. And then there's also a whole section of webinars on scaling pre-sales out there with presenters from many different walks of the pre-sales world out in our Scaling Pre-Sales webinar series recording area. And if you just go out to our blog or any of those areas, there's a search field. And if you just search for topics you're interested in, such as discovery, one of the hot topics that we did last year was this great panel that several pre-sales professionals were on this, how to do effective discovery. So you can search for a certain topic like that, and you'll find all kinds of webinar recordings, ebooks, blog articles, and so on out on our website, and DemoFest session recordings. So again, thank you so much. Appreciate all the involvement and hope you all have a wonderful day and enjoy the holiday season. Thanks, everybody.